They say that blood is thicker than water, but is it thicker than plastic? Here's your spooky spot on the NECA Toys Halloween H20 Ultimate Michael Myers. Celebrate the return of a horror icon with NECA's Ultimate Michael Myers action figure. Based on his appearance in the chilling 1998 film Halloween H20 20 years later, 2 decades after the fateful Halloween night in Haddonfield, Michael Myers resurfaces to track down his sister Laurie Strode. As the shadows grow long on another Halloween night, evil returns with a vengeance. This fully articulated 7-inch scale figure captures Michael's menacing presence with screen-accurate detail. Accessories include interchangeable masked heads and hands, fire axe, kitchen knives, ice skate, and pumpkin. Comes with a collector-friendly window box packaging with opening front flap, perfect for display. Luckily for me, Ronnie wasn't paying attention to the gates again. I was able to slip my shipment through. Before, though, we get a closer look at the new NECA Toys Halloween H20 Michael Myers. As we always do here, before, of course, we get things underway, we're going to grab the tape measure and see how tall the figure stands. Really looking forward to this one. Not only do I think the Michael Myers look from Halloween H20 is one of my personal favorites, but Halloween H20 sits pretty high on my list right after Halloween 4. As for how tall the figure is going to stand, Michael Myers seems to be clocking in at about 7 3/4 of an inch in height, working out to be a figure that's 19 centimeters tall. I know the timelines are so hard to keep in check with the movements of Myers, considering those timelines veer so far away from one another. If we keep to the canon and the idea that Laurie Strode does survive the events of not only Halloween 1, but we keep in canon the idea that they're siblings, then really the only figure that's got released by NECA that would make then sense to be displayed along with Halloween H20's Michael Myers would be the one from Halloween 2. Now, I'm picking my poison and choosing the one here that got paired along with Dr. Sam Loomis. If you prefer instead, you could obviously just display this as well with the Ultimate Michael Myers, the standalone from also Halloween 2. If we change the direction and the course altogether of the timeline, let's just say Laurie Strode never survives. Well, then instead we would introduce Jamie Lloyd. And while though these two figures would make no sense next to one another, the ones on either side at least would still be part of the same timeline. No, instead, though, Blumhouse decides, hey, why not? We don't need to have them necessarily related to one another. What if Laurie Strode not only doesn't leave Haddonfield in the first place, doesn't change her name to Carrie Tate? That made more sense. You know, whatever you could say about Halloween H20, the fact that, again, she had her personal demons. Laurie Strode seemed to drink a lot when she was Carrie Tate, but at least, though, she was smart, she knew to move away from the town. No, with Blumhouse, let's decide instead to have Laurie Strode stay in the town where all the events first took place. We'll keep her name. We'll keep probably around the same area of where she was still living. Fortifies her house. Of course, she teaches her daughter to grow up with the idea that one day the boogeyman would escape. That makes so much more sense. And again, while it doesn't make any sense, again, to be displaying this figure with this figure behind, here's what the figure looks like, though, with the Blumhouse trilogy, Halloween Kills Michael Myers. As for the accessories that come include with Myers, first you get yourself not a jack-o'-lantern because it hasn't been carved yet, but you get yourself a full pumpkin. It's strange, though, to get yourself a pumpkin with Michael Myers and not have a face already carved into it. Though something, to be fair, was carved into it. As you can see, embedded into the flesh, there is a slit. Take any one of the 2 knives that come included with the figure. There's the bloody or there's the clean, and you can lodge the knife into that. Hey, why not, too? He also comes included with the axe, and the axe can also do the same. Choose, though, again, when you have the direction of it, you can also just lodge it in the top like that. I don't know if people would really be necessarily cutting their jack-o'-lanterns using a big giant axe. That seems sloppy and unnecessary. You'd never go for the intricate cuts if you're going to be using a big giant wielded axe like this, but you can, though, lodge it into the jack-o'-lantern or to the pumpkin the exact same way. The pumpkin, I suppose, looks okay. I mean, right away, I could tell you this would not be a pumpkin I'd pick out from the patch because it's missing the stem. The stem is what adds the character to the pumpkin. I generally like the ones that have little curlicues. This one has absolutely nothing. It's got detail, though. It does have still something for that. But it's such a very bland-looking pumpkin. Move that off to the side. As mentioned, though, already, the figure does come included with knives. The knives are very similar to one another. I couldn't, though, help but notice the one that's got the blood on the end of it seems to have a slightly lighter brown handle. The blades, though, are very similar to one another. Maybe they were thrown at him by I was going to say Laurie Strode, by Carrie Tate, pulling them from the drawer and just chucking them at Michael Myers. Myers seems to dodge them pretty well. But again, like you get one that's bloody and you get one that isn't. The one that's interesting, though, the one that's got the blood on it doesn't actually have blood on the edge of the blade. So I don't know if he maybe has just wiped just the very edge of it on the edge of his boiler. I don't know. Anyways, though, he gets 2 of those. He gets a bunch of hands as well, which we'll have a look at as well. And as seen as we already looked at this too, the figure does also come include the axe. There isn't at all a bit of blood on the axe. Laurie Strode, of course, has that at the very end of the movie when she's screaming at Michael. Michael, come out. Michael! And then, of course, finally has the confrontation of him, takes away, though, it isn't so much so an ambulance or a hearse. She kind of just wheels away in the van, and then she ends up, well, I don't want to give it away for anybody that hasn't seen the movie. One thing that's kind of interesting, too, is that the figure does also come include with the skates. Now, the skate, though, we see embedded into the head of Jimmy Howell. Jimmy Howell was played by Joseph Gordon-Levitt. So, again, that was kind of cool to see, like a rising star kind of in these early days of one of the earlier film movies that he was in. The skate itself, as you can see, does have blood on the end of it. What's rather, though, interesting about the fact that they include the skate is that this really isn't the head that he has at the very beginning of the movie. When he goes through and eventually kills Marion Chambers, he's actually wearing more closer to a head sculpt from the one from Halloween Curse. Now, there's actually 4 masks that they use for Halloween H20, which is kind of one of the more puzzling things about the film, is that the masks do change a lot. There's the Stan Winston mask, which is the majority of the masks that we see throughout the film. There is also the K&B mask, which I think is one of the worst masks ever in the movies. And then there's also the buckler mask. Now, the mask that we see at the very beginning of Halloween H20, it's kind of really hard to see because it's so low lit, but he's actually wearing a mask that's closer to resembling the Halloween 6 Curse of Michael Myers mask. So really, though, if you wanted to have the figure displayed where, like, for example, he's carrying around the figure skates, the hockey skate, then really, though, you'd want to maybe swap the head out. The thing that's kind of interesting about this, though, is that you can use this head with that body because they're using the exact same ball joint. Well, maybe come back to that idea. Just leave it with me. Come back to the idea of swapping out the heads in a second. First things first, though, again, we're going to want to look through all the remaining hands. It's kind of puzzling, though, the fact that they include so many hands that are similar to one another. So if we grab a hand that's like for like, what's a good like for like hand? No, that's the opposite way. There we go. If you look at this hand and you look at this hand, did they not look somewhat almost identical to one another? I just feel like it's puzzling, really, when a figure company decides to release an accessory that are so close to one another. You sort of start to look at that and ask the questions, could the plastic not have been used for something else? I know what you're thinking. What would you have used, humbled reviewer, instead of just giving us some extra hands? Well, let's just say, I mean, if we're looking at the hands, that's not a good hand because that's actually a wider grip hands. So you have ones that are so close to resembling one another. I would have used the plastic. So let's just gather up the plastic right now. Let's pretend we're making it away in the factory. What else would you have included instead of extra hands that look so close to one another? I would have included the drawer. The kitchen drawer in which Michael Myers actually gets his knife lodged in it, and he's trying to fish the knife out from the drawer. Just a little tiny rectangular plastic drawer with a slot somewhat similar to the pumpkin, where you can have yourself the knife embedded into that. Michael is, of course, trying to wave this out, get his knife freed from the drawer, but I probably would have included that. I know I'm flailing my hands a lot. I would have used that as the plastic dedicated away from using, again, multiple hands that are somewhat similar. So again, like, you get a bunch of very similar hands. I know, again, like, if you look at them, you could really honestly say that this has a little bit more of a wider grip. This one has more of a slotted grip. One would then be better holding like the axe. So like this one here is better for really holding the axe because it does have a wider grip. You just take yourself the axe, wedge it into his hand like that, and Michael Myers has himself an axe, not necessarily for chopping wood. These smaller hands obviously are then more accommodating for things like the knives. So like with a smaller slot, you just take yourself the knife and plug that in place. Now, this may be a little harder to do, but there you go. You can just plug in the knife and whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. He's got himself then the knife to start slashing people with. Anyways, though, again, like, he does come include with a whole bunch of swappable hands. The hands themselves can be swapped out with Michael Myers by just holding onto the forearm. Not that we're going to spend a whole lot of time doing this, but we're just going to pop the hand off, find a thumb that goes in, and plug into the socket. Just like that. Twisty, twisty, twisty. Make sure it's all the way in there. There we go. So again, you can't swap out the hands. I mean, everybody knows, I'm sure by now, how to swap out hands. I'm not going to try to dumb this down to anybody that is familiar with NECA figures. But let's move all those accessories to the side. The figure then does come included with 3 swappable heads. Now, again, while we don't necessarily get ourselves the buckler mask, which, again, is the Halloween Curse of Michael Myers, as a stand-in, certainly, though, again, you could always really then use the... Oh, sorry, didn't mean to startle you. You could really use the Halloween Curse Michael Myers head and swap it out for the one that he has now. So if you had multiple of these Michael Myers, I mean, twist my rubber arm. If you got 2 or 3 of these, you would then have, I guess you'd necessarily need 4, but then you'd need yourself another curse Michael Myers. But again, like if you did want to, you could pop the head off from the curse. And if you look at the two bodies, if you look at the two ball joints, they seem identical. Maybe this one looks a little bit bigger. I guess that would be a perfect ending for the end of Michael Myers, just again, because he has his head rolling away from him. But if you did want to, you could use the buckler mask and just pop that onto the ball joint. And then that would make then the most sense. You just get yourself the hockey skates. You can have that display in the head. I mean, I know the head does look a little bit too big on the figure's body, but it does work if you wanted to use the opener Michael Myers mask. We're not going to use that though right now. The pop on the original mask that we get here. We're going to swap it out in a second. The other ones available though, we get ourselves. We'll look at that one now. We'll look at that one last. We get, first of all, the K&B mask. Now, I still think the K&B mask is the worst Michael Myers mask ever in the film. Now, I know you could make the argument that the CG mask is by far the worst. I don't really want to say that that's a true mask because essentially it is just really taking the K&B mask. And what they tried to do was they tried to match it to the Stan Winston mask. So they CG'd over top of the K&B mask to try to give us something that resembled more to this. Well, no, not that one. Try to resemble something that looked more like the Stan Winston mask. Now, you may be asking yourself, well, I'm sure they already had the masks available, didn't they? Why wouldn't they just gone back and reshot it with the Stan Winston mask? It wasn't so much, though, that they didn't have the mask anymore. They actually didn't have that set anymore. So instead of actually trying to reconstruct... Now, I could have maybe made the argument, would they have not just been able to green screen the whole back scene and just use then the Stan Winston mask and then just CG that scene instead? But no, they didn't do that instead. So what they ended up trying to do was they took the K&B mask, which is this one again right here, and they CG'd something over top of it to make it look as close as to the Stan Winston mask as they could. And that's clearly where they made the fault. Now, the K&B mask is still seen through some of the movie. It's basically more the far shots as you see kind of Michael Myers, and it's always ones that you can spot right away. It's just an ugly looking mask. But all the far shots where you see Michael is walking, or you see him walking towards something, it's generally this mask because they didn't feel the need to go back and reshoot that scene again. Also, the big one, too, is when he's waving his knife, when he's also trying to kill John. When he's waving the knife, a lot of times, though, it is also the K&B mask. My fault, really, with the K&B mask lies with the fact that it's so smooth. It looks like it has absolutely no features to it whatsoever. I mean, I think if anything, NECA's done more of a service to this mask that it looks better in hand than it does actually in the movie. It just looks like it's just a blob of shape. His ears have like no characteristics to them whatsoever, no defining features, and the mask just looks so too super smooth. Now, to swap out the mask, it's just, again, you pop it off from the ball joint, pop on the K&B mask. This never will be on my display unless I pick up a second Michael Myers. Then maybe I'll have the figure displayed with a K&B mask, and I'll just leave the decapitated head of the Stan Winston mask just rolling alongside like that. So again, like we've already established the fact that there is the Stan Winston mask. That is the hero mask that we see through the majority of the movie. And then there's the CG mask. Now, if you're looking really at the two, I don't know if really I would say that one looks a lot more CG than the other than really just the fact that there's a little bit of gray on the side of his cheek. Other than that, I don't think it's that much different, really, than the regular Stan Winston mask. The eyes are a little bit more finer featured there, but I think like the faces don't look all that much different from one another. The hair are a little bit different. You can see, though, that maybe this one looks a little bit more of a darker brown. Other than that, though, I don't think there's really much that's been changed. You know, though, I feel like a lot of people are probably going to dismiss this CG mask and think that, man, that just looks like a pile of crap. I'm going to put that back in the tray. I'm never going to be talking about it again. For a lot of people that did pick up the Halloween 2 Ultimate Michael Myers will probably be familiar with the Ben Tramer head. And a lot of people ended up trying to customize this. First of all, I don't think it's an easy mask to work with because the mask has a lot of kind of non-refined features. I mean, it looks very... It doesn't have the nicest looking head in the first place, but a lot of times people usually have gone in there and tried to paint the blonde hair more of a black color instead, and had that be their 1978 Michael Myers. Could I perhaps entertain the idea not doing that, but instead trying to tool something with using the CG mask? Because if you look at it from the sides, that's not a bad 78 Myers. Now, I know, truth be told, you may want to be darkening the eyes just a little bit. It has, first of all, the ripped away sideburns, which if you look at the Ben Tramer head, it never had the ripped away sideburns. So it's already ahead of the game for that. I think if anything, you probably could go in there and just fix the hair up, maybe have more of the hair further forward, and of course add the little devil horns on the sides of the hair. And I think you could get yourself a pretty good likeness. I know, again, it's not the perfect, but it's certainly better than the Ben Tramer mask, and use this instead as a stand-in 78. So I wouldn't dismiss this. I wouldn't say, oh, throw this away somewhere. Don't put this back in the tray. Maybe consider the idea of tooling this, maybe taking away the eyebrows, right? Yeah, I think that could be a pretty good 78 Myers. And of course, the main one then being is that we've got ourselves I keep going back to the curse. We go back to the Stan Winston mask. So again, like this is the Stan Winston, this is the, I guess, somewhat of the CG mask. Again, very similar to one another. I actually really like the Halloween H20 Myers mask. I know there are some scenes where like his eyes are a little too visible, especially when he's pinned, with the van, and then Laurie Strode's coming down with the axe. But I feel like though that's a really good looking mask. The only thing I would have probably done differently from a figure standpoint is I would have made the hair a little spikier. I mean, Michael has quite spiky hair, and it continues also with Halloween Resurrection. Yeah, this is definitely the best head sculpt of the ones at least we get provided with this figure. Now, again, to swap the heads out, the difference between the KMB and the Stan Winston. You let me know down below in the comments, which do you think is the better looking Michael Myers mask? I'm going to stick with this one just because, again, that's the one we see the majority of in the film. Again, just to swap that out, you just pop that off and replace it with this one here. Now, we'll put a little bit of pressure on that too, just to make sure it's securely attached on there. I think also too, you could probably even use these coveralls if you did want to use the CG mask. And again, customize this, because this would probably be the closest I would feel to a 1978 pair of coveralls. Speaking of the coveralls, though, I think there's one thing that I would have also changed is the color of the coveralls. Depending, again, when you see the movie, sometimes it does look like it's a little bit more of a bluish, but I think the majority of it looks more like he's got like an ash brown gray costume with a little bit of blue. It's certainly not the blue that we get here. And again, like the colors of Michael's coveralls do again change throughout the courses of these films. But I think the coveralls, though, for the H20 release probably could have used a little bit more gray and a little less blue. The coveralls do look good. And again, like if I was to compare it with the ones that we get here from, like this was the curse, the decapitated curse, Michael Myers body. It doesn't look like they're using a lot of the same body elements. Maybe like the back of the pockets, for example. It does look like maybe... It doesn't really look like they're using the same legs. Oh, maybe they are. It looks like they've got the same seam line there. There are definitely some elements, maybe the lower legs also as well. The torso is, though, different between the two. I mean, the Cursed Michael Myers, I'm sorry. Let's put this guy down for a second. I can't keep talking about him with a head that's not even on his body in the first place. So we'll just pop that back under the ball joint. Get that all the way on there. We'll just leave it. Yeah, there we go. Yeah, the pockets are a little bit different from the Halloween 6 Michael Myers, the H20 Michael Myers. So there's a little bit differences there. All in all, though, I think it's a really good looking figure. I know, again, like some people don't really like the design of a Michael Myers where you see such visible eyes like this. We are still going to be getting ourselves a Resurrection Michael. And I'm hoping, though, with the now introduction of an Halloween H20 Michael, that we're eventually going to be getting ourselves a Carrie Tate as well. Now, for the figure's articulation, if you're familiar with Michael Myers by now, then you'll be obviously familiar with the posability that this guy possesses as well. Head's going to be on a ball joint, so the head, first of all, does rotate, I suppose, all the way around. The head can look down, and it can look up, and you can also move it back and forth as well. There is technically some posability. There, like, if you feel like his torso, there's definitely some softer material here. Not to the point where really, I guess you could be able to move it that much. It almost feels like you'd be able to crunch it just a little bit, but with the material being so hard like this, you can't really do too much with it. The arms do rotate all the way around. You can also hinge out the arms so you can get easily a T-pose or 90-degree angle bend. There is no swivel here at the top of the bicep. However, though, there is a swivel right at the top where the first joint starts. There's technically two joints of Michael Myers, one here and one here. The figure does also have a swivel in the hands, rotating all the way around, and a little hinge back and forth there too. Standard levels of posability, so you're going to have a split on the legs. Again, I know some people don't really like the fact that this section of his body does bow out like this. It does make him look very diaper-esque, but because, again, like this lower half of his body is really technically attached to the top of his torso anyways, I don't think it doesn't bother me as much. I mean, again, like, they really have to work with what they have to work with. If this was a retro cloth figure, for example, this would all be done in fabric. It may fall naturally more better on the figure's body. With using plastic, it's the best that you're probably going to be able to get. Legs go forward. Yes, they do. They also go back as well. There's a swivel at the top of the thigh. Watch me swivel, swivel, swivel. There's also a single hinge in the knee. That's all it's going to do. And that's not technically true. It does bend at the knee. You can also rotate it back and forth this way as well. And then Michael Myers does have a hinge up and down this way and an ankle rocker as well. Best of the Michaels that we've gotten so far from NECA, it's pretty high. It's pretty high. I say this as a biased guy. I just generally like Halloween H2O anyways. I just recently watched Halloween H2O. And again, if you're looking to display this guy on the shelf, even though, again, like you kind of have to overlook the problems of the canon for Halloween films in general. In realistic terms, none of these Myers really should be on display. I guess these two would really be on display, or these two would be on display, but never really should all three Michael Myers be on the same shelf at the same time. Now, again, like whether you look at the Blumhouse as being like the true successor to Halloween 1978, I generally, though, like the direction that they went with more Halloween H2O. Laurie Strode, for me, doesn't necessarily have to be a hero character. She doesn't have to be a Sarah Connor. She could be a troubled person that just suffers through own personal demons. This Carrie Tate, for example, drank a lot, and until finally at the very end of the movie, she faced her fears and faced the monster. And I like that. I like that more as instead of Laurie Strode that just had the events happen 40 plus years ago, and somehow she has still held on to the idea that one night a killer would then escape 40 years later. All in all, though, the figure does really look good. I think the accessories for the most part are good too. I mean, it's kind of still jarring to see a pumpkin that isn't carved into a jack-o'-lantern, but that is something, again, we see in the film. Again, you got a bunch of different knives. You get yourself the axe. You could display Michael Myers with the axe, or again, let's hope we get ourselves a Halloween H2O Laurie Strode / Carrie Tate. And I'm sure she's probably going to be coming with an axe for that. All in all, a great looking Michael Myers. It took me a little bit while to actually get my hands finally on him, but I'm so glad that I did. See, Michael Myers has successfully lowered himself on the top rafters with only the one arm, leaving then the other arm perfectly to hold the axe, which really isn't actually true. Laurie Strode, or Carrie Tate, is the one that's holding the axe at the time that Michael Myers does that feat, but then she proceeds to stab him several times. To go back, and what was interesting about that, to watch that scene again, Laurie actually, I counted this, she stabs him 6 times, similar to what they did with Loomis. Loomis shot Michael Myers 6 times, and then what ended up happening? He fell off the balcony of the house. Laurie, or Carrie, stabs him 6 times, and then what ends up happening? Michael Myers falls from the balcony onto the tabletop. A great nod, though, to the original 1978 film. What's also kind of cool, too, is that at the very end of the movie, when Laurie is standing there with the axe in her hand, she is heavy breathing in the same way that they wrapped the film up in the 1978 film. I think that's cool, though, that they make so many references to the original, and they also make references that they throw in there as well with Janet Leigh and Psycho, down to the fact she's even driving the exact same car she did in the film as well. There's a lot of cool Easter eggs in the Halloween H2O film. There's a lot of cool things that they also throw in with Michael Myers here. I think the mask looks good on him. There are still a few little things from a figure standpoint I probably would have tweaked. I think his hair probably could have been a little spikier. I actually kind of really like the fact that Michael Myers does have spiky hair. Visible eyes, I know, is probably a deal breaker for a lot of fans of Michael Myers. They generally, though, like to have the shape be completely shapeless. Now, speaking of shapeless faces, I mean, obviously the figure does also come included with the K&B head sculpt. I'm never going to be displaying him at all with that, unless I decide to maybe pick up a second Michael Myers. It's happened in the past. If I end up doing that, then yeah, maybe I'll end up displaying him that way. Don't so quickly discard the idea of not using the CG mask. I think with a little customization, you could probably get yourself a closer resembling 1978 shape mask using that head sculpt than you would trying to do that with the Ben Tramer head. There's a few things wrong also with the Ben Tramer head. I mean, the sideburns are still intact. The face looks a little bit puffier. I think you probably get a lot more mileage using the CG mask, so I don't think it's a complete waste that they included that with the figure. The only one thing that he doesn't actually have is the cursed Michael Myers mask that we see at the very beginning of the movie when he ends up killing Marion. Other than that, though, I think the figure has everything he needs to have. I mean, yeah, maybe a drawer from the kitchen would have been an ideal thing with a slot that you could then still embed the knife the exact same way. Other than that, and maybe changing the color of the coveralls to more of an ash gray, more of a grayish blue than the blue that we get right here, it's a pretty good looking Michael Myers. Do you agree with that? Disagree with that? Let me know down below. And what do you guys think of the Halloween H2O mask? Do you like, though, that Michael Myers has visible eyes, or you prefer that the eyes be sunken, dark, the blackest eyes? If you guys did enjoy this video, you can do us all and throw it a like. You guys want to stick around for more so? I hope so. We got more spooktacular reviews coming your way for the rest of Spottober, which is coming close to an end. If I'm looking at the outdated calendar, The outdated calendar, although to be fair, is telling me that Halloween is on a Wednesday. No, you stupid outdated calendar. Halloween is not on a Wednesday. Halloween, in fact, is actually on a Friday. Very few times we've actually, well, I guess anyone looking at, if you probably put that in Google, how many times has Halloween happened on a Friday? You could come up with the answer a lot quicker than I'm trying to guess right now. There's probably been a good handful of times in the last decades or so where we've had Friday Halloweens, but it's pretty cool the fact that we actually can take our kids out trick-or-treating or just stay home and stay up all night watching Halloween movies. If you guys did enjoy this video, do us a solid and throw it a like. If you guys want to stick around for more, so yeah, I know so. Definitely more videos coming your way, guys. So as always, thanks for watching. See you guys next time.